Hello class, welcome to Module 5 of the Medical Interpreter, the role of the medical interpreter. In this module, we're just going to review the knowledge and skills we've gained so far in this course and within our standards of practice. We're also going to put in some real life challenges to see if we can apply our knowledge, and we're going to talk about conducting ourselves professionally. This week we are going to review modules 5.1 to 3. We're going to discuss how the role of medical interpreter supports communicative autonomy. This is a review. Apply decision-making protocol for advocacy. We've also done that too. And explore best practices that support the national standards of practice. So our first 5.1 is the role of the interpreter. The questions you need to know how to answer, especially going into your final exam in a couple weeks. What exactly is communicative autonomy? What is your role? Your job is to facilitate communication. Where does that job begin and end? Communicative autonomy is the capacity of each party in an encounter to be responsible for and in control of his or her communication. What does communicative autonomy mean? The interpreter is not acting as a filter. You try hard to be a faithful reporter of the message from each person speaking. Each party can make decisions about what they say and how they say it. Your job is to honor the message and to give voice to them. Your decisions matter. So how is interpreting like public transportation? So public transportation, like in our area, the PATCO or the SEPTA, offers an external service that's reliable and consistent. So if you don't own a car, you can get to work and you can get to do your tasks autonomously. They operate on fixed schedules and they're reliable. So what would happen if a bus veered off route to take a pregnant woman home? Or what would happen if a bus line just stopped running one day through, I don't know, Federal Street in Camden to take people to work in Philadelphia? So think of it this way. What happens when a medical interpreter fails to adhere to ethics, standards, protocols, and best practices? So role limitation is actually a strength. Only if you protect, respect professional boundaries, and role limitation can offer you unique contributions. Remember, you belong to a wider system. Interpreters in the United States that interpret in medical facilities all adhere to this protocol, not just you. Your contribution to interpreting is concrete, unique, and crucial. You're relaying the message by giving voice to the people in the room. You're only responsible for what is under your control, not for all these factors outside of the room. All right. Advocacy. Applying a decision-making protocol. Advocacy is taking action or speaking up on behalf of a service user or patient whose safety, health, and well-being or dignity is at risk. I'm going to add serious risk with the purpose of preventing harm. Advocacy involves helping out. Advocacy is intended as a direct support to the patient. Decisions about advocacy and whether or not to advocate are difficult and risky because you are stepping out of your role and you are, in fact, taking away some communicative autonomy at the time. Each situation you encounter while you interpret is unique, and only one person will live the rest of a lifetime with your conscience. And yes, that's you. So in the end, when you decide to be an advocate, you have to make that critical decision very quickly, but you're the one that lives with the consequences either way. You have to choose sometimes between competing options that are not ideal, and how do you actually choose? All right. First, the proper response. Social justice should be a concern for everyone. I would hope that any of us witnessing social injustice act to change it. In doing so smartly or well, context matters. In the context of an interpreting job, I believe the proper response of an interpreter is to facilitate communication, period. Doing so promotes social justice by setting an environment where language and communication presumably free parties to engage in higher level interactions. I prefer interpreters to not step outside that role no matter what. Doing so robs me of my own expression and reinforces a picture to hearing parties that I have little or no power on my own. I feel interpreters do have a place for expression, just not on the job, except to make communication clear and complete. This may be different for other deaf folks, but I think it's generally good policy and practice for all. Surprised to see myself say that, as I am usually a strong believer that people should speak up. However, interpreting is not that same kind of situation as direct communication between individuals is. This is written by a deaf consumer about interpreters. Very interesting response from someone who feels as though they don't need someone to speak up on their behalf, and it robs them of their own expression. Of course, that's an opinion, but it's just how you could see two sides of the coin. What does advocacy involve? Taking the side of a patient or client to correct an unfair or risky situation. It requires you to step out of your professional role as an interpreter. It creates a dilemma that involves competing demands. You have to choose the least potentially harmful course of action, whether that's to not advocate or to advocate. Almost always the best option is to stay within your role. You should avoid advocacy and stay out of it by default, except if the patient is in danger or could be harmed or could die as a result. That's when you advocate. Reserve advocacy for extreme no-choice circumstances, when a moral requirement to help outweigh professional ethical requirements. On page, it says page 387, but that could be the wrong page number, but there was a roadmap that we went over before. When should you get involved? Just made this a little bigger. Okay, so step number 1. What causes your urge to take action? Consciously identify the cause for advocacy. So why are you deciding, first of all, that you need to advocate and step outside of your role? Okay, number 2. If you don't advocate, is the patient's safety, health, and well-being or human dignity at serious risk? Yes or no? Let's say you come to the answer, yes, it is. Number 3. Is the serious risk against the service user safety or the patient's safety, health, and well-being or human dignity imminent, meaning will happen right away? Okay. If the answer is no, you're going to find the right channels to report the situation. But if the answer is yes, that's when you would take immediate action in the room. So this is a pretty good protocol to have on you, to print out, to have in some form to look at, so that it helps you make that decision better. Okay, follow that roadmap. I want you to identify what causes you to want to advocate, and then decide if I didn't advocate, would the service user or patient in our case be at risk? And if this person is at risk, how imminent is that risk? Okay. So do I want to advocate because of personal desire? Then ignore it. Is it a real need for the patient? Then consider action. Remember, some things might trigger you, but it could be because of your own personal feelings, not because it's actually necessary for the patient. So you need to keep that in mind when deciding. 2, is there a serious risk involved for the patient? No, then stay in your professional role and do not advocate. Yes, then please consider action. Step 3, is there immediate risk for this patient? Like if you don't do something in that moment, could something really dire happen? If the answer is no, then you're going to report it later to someone at the medical facility or to your interpreter supervisor. If the answer is yes, then advocate during the session. So in terms of reporting a critical incident, what would you report a critical incident to at work? This really depends on your status of employment. Now, those of you that work already in a medical facility in a different role, you have protocol that you already follow. However, if you are ever working as a staff interpreter, you're going to report the situation within the institution as a critical incident. So whatever that means, it could mean going to a supervisor, putting something in writing. There might be a form you have to fill out. If you're freelancing, which is what I used to do, which is going around to different facilities through an agency, then you're going to report to the agency that sent you and not where you interpret it to. So if I'm hired by, let's say, Language Services Associate, and I'm an interpreter in Jefferson Hospital in Cherry Hill, and I notice something happened, it's not imminent danger, I'm going to report this back to the person that I work for, okay, which happens to be the agency, because it's not something that's immediately needed. This could be, I'm trying to think of something that you wouldn't have to immediately go to a supervisor at work. I'll think of something and come back to it. But generally, it's something that's not going to cause a ton of harm to a patient if it's something that's not addressed immediately. If you're a self-employed interpreter and engaged directly by the institution, you'll find someone to report there. So that's like if the institution hires you as an interpreter, then you would obviously go somewhere in that institution to report it. Could be a nurse supervisor, or it just depends on where you work. You have the right to ask for the right person to make this report to. Learning Objective 5.3, Standards of Practice. We're going to explore best practices for medical interpreters to support the national standards of practice. So Code of Ethics. What is a Code of Ethics? It's a set of directives that specifies the requirements or expectations intended to guide the conduct of practitioners in a profession. You should know this. You should know what your standards of practice are for your final exam. You should know what is a Code of Ethics. So it's a set of principles or values that will that govern the conduct of members of a profession, provides guidelines for making judgments. Standards of practice are different from Code of Ethics. A set of guidelines that define what an interpreter does in performance in his or her role, and the tasks and skills of interpreters should be able to perform in the course of fulfilling duties of a profession. Please know what a Code of Ethics is and standards of practice for your final exam. Okay, what should an interpreter do? Code of Ethics is like your rule book, and your standards of practice are a guide. Okay. Ethics are the rules, standards are the guidelines. Ethics are what we should do. Standards are how we should do it. Ethics are pretty strict, standards are more flexible. Standards are often organized under ethical principles. Standards help us to support ethics and guide us to stay in our role. Okay, comparing ethics and standards. Ethical principles show you the direction to take, guiding you in basic principles of right and wrong. They're the ultimate guide for your professional behavior. Standards of practice offer more concrete strategies. If ethical principles are the compass, standards of practice are the steps you take. The destination is communicative autonomy. Ethics help you map out the destination. Standards describe behaviors to help you get there. This is a good visual. Ethics, the result, a beautiful chocolate cake, and standards, the recipe. Got all the ingredients there. All right. Think back to before you were trained to interpret. Referring to your copy of the standards of practice, everyone, I know I probably put that earlier in the course to document. Come up with 5 examples for each. Standards you almost always respected, standards you sometimes respected, and standards you rarely expected. Okay. Rules. We have standards of practice, code of ethics. This is just a chart to help you see the difference between the two of them. Okay, we're going to apply some standards now. Red means stop, that means never. Green means go, always. And yellow means sometimes. Here we go. Interpret everything stated by all parties. What were we going to say? Going to say green or yellow. Okay, so yellow only because when you're summarizing for a patient that might have dementia. Generally, this is going to be green. All right, so let's start with example 2. All right, number 2, if the client or patient asks your opinion, offer it. What are you going to say, class? Red, green, or yellow? Of course it's red. We don't ever give personal opinion when we interpret. However, if you are mediating, you could gently suggest that the provider or patient provide or clarify a certain issue. Next one, if the provider forgets important information, add it for the patient. Red, green, or yellow? Red. However, if there is a serious medical risk that might happen if you don't bring it up in the session, you may ask for a timeout with the provider or find another way to alert. Maybe have a debrief after, but generally this is going to be red. Do not add information. Next one, maintain strict confidentiality always. Red, green, or yellow? I would say sometimes it could be yellow. It's acceptable for exceptions, such as being required by law to break confidentiality when relevant. Suspicion of child abuse, elder abuse, risk of suicide or homicide. You can't stay quiet when you hear something like that. You're a mandated reporter in that setting. Okay, next one. You have been offered a beautiful gift from a client and you want to accept it, even though you're paid by that client. Red, green, or yellow? It's a big red. Even though you don't want to offend anyone, you can't just take a gift, okay? It's basically always the case at work, except if you are the company and you are providing the actual service directly to a client. But I don't even do that. I don't like to accept gifts. And you could do your say no policy where you don't ever say no, but you offer other solutions. There are 29 of these types of situations in the Google slide deck. I'm going to ask that you go on there and just read through them and try to give the answers that you think are most appropriate. We will also practice these during our review games next week. Okay, thank you.